All right. Being very cognizant of time on this Friday afternoon, I'd like to get us started. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Friday Digest series. Probably the most important one we have going on right now is on the 2024 Environmental Scorecard. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jason All. I'm the Director of Strategic Communications for Maryland LCV. As you know, our goal with our Friday Digest is to provide you with the information, tools, and resources to be an informed and active advocate. And really, no other Friday Digest better exemplifies this than covering the scorecard today. For more than 40 years, the scorecard has been our beacon of transparency for Maryland's elected officials, shedding light on their commitments to our state's conservation efforts. The scorecard is more than just a record of the past year's votes, but really a snapshot of our progress toward a sustainable and just Maryland. Joining me today is Kristen Harbison, our political director. But before we dive into the meat of the scorecard, I'd like to introduce and turn it over to Maryland LCV's executive director, Kim Coble, to explain exactly what this publication is and, more importantly, why it is such an important tool in our arsenal. So, Kim, take it away.
Thank you, Jason, and happy Friday afternoon, everybody. It looks like a gorgeous day here in Annapolis. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk about the structure of the scorecard, and I want to first start with the purpose of it. We put this out every year, and it really has are the audience that we developed this for, honestly. We want to give you the information and the tools to be informed, engaged, active voters and constituents. And so we try to keep this as informative to you as we can possibly make it. The secondary audience is, of course, the legislature, and we track how they vote, where they vote on environmental bills, and hold them accountable to it. I had a funny situation on Monday. We released the scorecard, and on Monday afternoon, I ran into one of the chairmans and said, "Hello, Mr. Chairman." And before he said anything, he said, "I got 100%. And so they care. It matters to them a lot about their vote, and they work hard for it. So they're the other audience for this. There's four parts to this year's scorecard. We keep changing the format to kind of keep up to date with the issues and the concerns that we have. So we are working pretty hard to make it a informed document. So this year we have four sections to it. This is the cover, but let's go to the next slide there, Jason. We have individual scores, and this is we have it in the Senate and we have it in the House. This is the page from the Senate. I just want to, again, go through the structure. You can see the column of, you're not seeing slides, apparently. Okay, well, I'll try to talk through this as we resolve any issues there. There's a column with the name of the senator or the name of the delegate in the House, and they're alphabetized. Their district. We also provide their 2024 score as well as their lifetime score. And then the bills that we scored them on this year, there were eight, excuse me. If they voted in the right direction for us, if they voted pro-environment, there's a green check. If they voted against it, there's a red X. And if there's an E, it means they were excused, have an excused absence. So that is the individual scores, and you can look up your district and who's representing you. That's on our website. There's an interactive way to find that information if you don't know, but that's the individual scores. The second section that we have in there are the chamber, what we call chamber scores. What we found a couple years ago is that we would rate the individual scores, but there were actions being done at the chamber where if a vote, depending on what happened, maybe a bill didn't make it all the way to a vote. And how do we track that? And so we have different categories, but how did the chambers do? How did the Senate and the House do? with these leading issues. And you can see in this slide, we have the list of bills by name. We have the bill numbers for the House bill and the Senate bill and the status of it. And then we have the thumb, right? And whether or not, how did the Senate and the House do on climate and energy issues? They did okay. That's what that thumb means. That's going sideways. We have an up for a good job and a down for a poor job. So we rate the chamber scores. So we've got individual scores, we have chamber scores. This year, we've added two new sections. And there's a page where we describe setback and challenges. There were two major setbacks this year. One was the Critical Infrastructure Streamlining Act. This was the bill on data centers. We talked about it a lot. It had to do with backup generators at data centers being excused from environmental reviews and permitting. And then there was also the last minute rollback of the building energy performance standards that was done through a budget amendment. And there's a page where we discuss these and make sure that you, as an informed voter, understand the challenges that these two actions presented. We did not score these bills or these votes. The budget amendment wasn't an individual action to vote on, number one. And then on the data center bill, we negotiated a compromise of 15% tax, 15% of the tax revenue from the data center will go to clean energy projects. And we got that in instead of scoring it. Anyway, this section is to give you a deep look into these two tough issues that we felt went in the wrong direction this session. And then the last portion is a new thing called the unfinished agenda. And it's kind of a fun chart, very visual. There's a lot of bills that get introduced. We have no expectation that they will all be voted on or that they will all pass. There's almost 3,000 bills a year. We know some environmental bills are not going to make it all the way through the agenda. However, what we did is we really looked at some critical areas. For example, the taking trash incineration out of the RPS bill for the 7th year in a row. It didn't progress. It didn't get a vote. There was nothing to score, and there was no action for the 7th year in a row. Sustainable climate funding. We know climate funding bill passed. No environmental justice bill passed, right? So these are environmental justice. We were happy to have so many discussions about it and dialogue and interest, and yet nothing was done. And then the building emissions reduction, as I mentioned, was one that didn't advance in the direction that we wanted. So if you take a look at the report, there's a great visual that just shows how much really in these areas didn't move forward at all. The last section, and then I'll turn it back to Jason. Oh, excuse me. Here's the one on the unfinished agenda. And you can see the bill's title, the number, whether it was the House or the Senate, and how far it got. And, no vote, no vote, no vote, no vote on a lot of important bills. And we were really disappointed on that. The last section is you. And we cannot state more strongly the power of your voice. And it really matters. It makes a difference. We're trying to enable you to engage and hold your elected official accountable. If they have a great score, call them up and thank them. Send them an email and thank them. It matters. If they don't, let them know that you're watching. That matters. Let them know that they're not meeting your expectations. We have lots of ways for you to engage, and we can help you with that. Contact us, especially during session. We'll give you tips on where we need the pressure and who needs the phone calls. Yeah, so use your voice. We need you to help protect the environment in Maryland. And thank you again. Jason, back to you.
Kim, thank you so much. That was a great way to start off this meeting by going through the scorecard and showing how we can use it. But I know we really want to get to the meat of this thing, and I know we're a bit limited on time. So I'm very happy to be joined by Kristen Harbison, our political director, as we do this deep dive. I'd like to start by briefly going over our top legislative priorities. These are those overarching categories you saw through that presentation in which we built our 2024 legislative agenda. Kristen, can you give us a high-level overview of the policy areas our scorecard covers?
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody for joining this and for caring about the environmental votes. As we've done for the last several scorecards and reports, Maryland LCV focused on three main areas in the legislation we scored: climate and energy, justice and democracy, land and water. And climate and energy, we made some progress. The Brighter Tomorrow Act will boost solar energy adoption by extending tax breaks for community solar projects and creating new incentives for small rooftop and parking canopy solar projects. We successfully removed the manufacturer's exemption from the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reduction Act, which will require manufacturers to reduce their emissions just like every other industry. And we secured a one-time allocation of $90 million for climate initiatives, focusing on building electrification, EV infrastructure, and electric school buses, with at least 50% of the funding aimed at historically overburdened and underserved community. And we'll come back to that for just in terms of the funding in a minute. The Empower Reform Bill passed, which is terribly important. It updates energy efficiency programs and offers incentives for electric appliances, which should help lower energy bills for Marylanders. It brings that program in line with our climate goals in really important ways. We also saw progress with the Warmth Act, which establishes a pilot program for community-scale geothermal heating projects in low-income areas, which is, again, innovative and creative, and as the kinds of programs we need to see more of in Maryland. We did face some setbacks, as Kim mentioned. Of particular importance, the Maryland General Assembly failed to take action to fund the implementation of the Maryland Climate Pollution Reduction Plan through any of the potential avenues that were offered. That $90 million that I referenced earlier was a one-time allocation. It's not a systemic problem, and it's not a systemic funding source, and it doesn't come close to matching the full $1 billion price tag that the Climate Pollution Reduction Act requires. It's essential that we have this funding, that we find a mechanism that will help us meet all of these goals. And the General Assembly did not take those bills up in a way that could advance that funding mechanism. Kim mentioned the Critical Infrastructure Streamlining Act, which deals with data centers. The bill streamlines the permitting process for data centers in Maryland in hopes of attracting the economic boom that we've seen in other jurisdictions. But as anybody who's been paying attention to this issue knows, they consume substantial water and critically puts an enormous demand on our energy system. This bill exempted the data center diesel backup generators from the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, which is called the CPCN process. And it's the only permitting process that mandates consideration of climate, labor, and environmental justice, as well as potential ratepayer impacts. So taking these processes out of that permitting was a major setback. And despite the fact that, we worked pretty hard to add some amendments to make the bill less bad, the bill highlights the issue, the ongoing tension between economic development and environmental protection, setting it up as a false choice. We know we can do both. This bill made us seem like we needed to choose. And it's a great case study on the need to continually engage to ensure that all industries contribute to our climate future rather than undermining our climate goals. And Kim mentioned the rollback of the building energy performance standards through a last-minute budget amendment. This delayed the implementation of a really important section of the Climate Solutions Now Act. And potentially increases energy costs for vulnerable populations and undermining our efforts to reduce emissions from buildings. We're concerned about that budget language, both for the policy that it rolled back and for a really troubling lack of transparency. So that's, I think that's the best overview I can give.
It's a great overview, Kristen. I appreciate it. Very high level, but I think that's what we need. And there's a lot more granular detail in the scorecard. So we want to make sure you all have a chance to see that over the coming weeks. It's on our website, and we'll be sharing the link in the chat. I do want to get a look at what the scorecard, though, actually means for individual Marylanders. Kim provided some great insight into what it means to voters, but what does the scorecard do beyond that?
Sure. And as Kim said, the scorecard is primarily designed for you, for our voters, for engaged citizens who want to talk to their legislators about the issues that are matter to them, and hoping to give them a tool to be able to additionally talk to them and talk to them about the issues that matter to them and how they voted. So for our supporters, the scorecard is a roadmap for advocacy, and it's designed to empower you with information to communicate with legislators. Fundamentally, that is the most important role of this scorecard. We do, however, use it in our direct lobbying processes with Maryland LCV. As Kim said, many legislators really care about their scores and what it means for the conservation voters in their districts. Legislators reach out to us during sessions before key votes so that they can understand our position and the reasoning behind it, knowing that it impacts their environmental scores. And that their constituents and they know that their constituents look to those scores to influence their votes when elections roll around. Our Green Champions program, you'll notice that we have, I think, 10 Green Champions this year. This showcases the leaders who have gone above and beyond just the actions of voting for key legislations to highlighting the legislators who have led the charge. This program is meant to both encourage these extraordinary leaders to continue their advocacy, but also encourage others to seek ways to earn the distinction. And that's been, and people talk about the legislators who receive Green Champions love to be able to talk about that to their constituents. It's a real point of pride for them. And the scorecard highlights legislators that may need more education. As we get session draws nearer, we look at how we work with our partners for meetings, providing additional information, helping to make sure that they're talking to their constituents, which are you, and making sure that we can help them to understand what the issue is and why they should be voting differently if they need to be voting differently. This is a strategic compass guiding our work. It influences policy. It's a rallying point for our supporters. And it's a testament to the idea that when citizens stay informed and engaged, we can make a difference in shaping our future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kristen. We have a really engaged audience. I absolutely love that because we got a great question coming in as we were talking about what this means for individual Marylanders. But the question is, how can we increase the importance of climate and environmental bills with the MGA leadership specifically?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I think that the leadership of the General Assembly, first of all, they are the leadership, the House Speaker and the President of the Senate are elected to those positions by their membership, but they also have districts where they are also representing. So they've got two different constituencies. They have the constituency that they represent, that they were the voters who elected them in their districts, who they listen to, and they listen to you. They also have the constituencies of their chambers, the chambers that they lead. And so their members, if getting legislators talking to their leadership is a way to sort of show that this is something that is important to the state. And we've had situations where we're able to make sure that the entire the membership of a chamber is working with us to try to get the attention and show the importance of this issue to their leadership. And I'm talking this case around the House and Senate Speaker and President, but this is true about the other leadership slightly throughout the session, throughout the chambers.
Thank you. So both you and Kim touched on this a bit, but I want to dive into a little bit more granular question here. In your view, what's the biggest environmental challenge facing Maryland right now, and why wasn't it or was it addressed this past year?
Well, I think that if you talk to anybody who's working in Annapolis right about now, everybody will come back with the same answer about what the biggest challenge is, and that's the budget. We're facing a structural deficit, and that's significant, which means that every dollar is going to be fought over fiercely. And, as I say in a lot of different situations, we're a little state with really big goals, and all of those goals take money. And so how the General Assembly balances those priorities to make sure that all of our goals are met is really difficult. So I think that this is something that will require, and in order for the climate goals to reach those get the attention and be prioritized when they're fighting through the budget dollars, because every dollar can only be spent once. It requires everybody to be getting agitated and talking to their legislators and telling them that this is important. There are all the other goals. A lot of the other goals that have the budget demands are also really valuable, but we are here to make sure that the climate goals are addressed.
Great, that's excellent. Let's see, got some more questions here that are coming in. So I know we touched on this a little bit, but I always love to reiterate it and get a little deeper into it. But how can your average Marylander use the scorecard to effectively communicate with their representatives who have low scores?
I mean, you can look at this. We try to use this as an overview of what was important in the session generally. We don't capture every bill and every vote that was taken on every bill that was important. But we did try to sort of bring the issues that were of primary importance in the session from the entire environmental community writ large. So you can look at where your district is, who represents you, and really look at what they voted for or didn't. And talk to them about it. If they voted for it and it was something that you supported and you voted for it, thank them for it. I mean, really thank them for it, because that is something they don't hear nearly often enough. They need to know, they need positive reinforcement that what they did is valuable and that their constituents back them up on this. If they voted against something, or if in some cases they didn't vote on it, ask them why. I mean, sometimes they might not have been there for if they're excused or that's a non-voting, there might be a very good reason for it. It might have been like, oh, I wasn't there because of XYZ. But ask them about it. Ask them about where they are on it. If they don't have, why did they vote wrong? And then talk to them about why these bills are important to you. Your voice and your story is something that only you can tell. And they need to hear it, because they are responsible to you. They are there to represent your interests, and they can't represent your interests if you don't tell them what those interests are.
We've got a few more audience questions coming in that I'd like to get to with the time we have remaining. The first is, what can Maryland LCV and others do to ensure that the full Maryland climate plan is funded, and what obstacles must be overcome, and how do we do it?
Well, I mean, I talked about the budget challenge, and Maryland LCV is laser focused on getting this funding, and we're working with partners to do that. Making sure that the climate plan is prioritized in the budget is something that we are absolutely focused on. We can do that through, we do that through all the tools that we have available to us in terms of the conversations and relationships and the bills, and making sure that everybody knows about it. and they can't turn away anywhere without knowing that this is something that is important to us. But our voice is only as important, only as loud as what they hear from other people. And so it's what we as the conservation movement can do together. Maryland LCV can't do it alone. You know, we have a staff that is dedicated, but we're still just a few people. But with the strength and the power of all of the people that are find this valuable, it's a mighty voice. And so it's something that we can only do with everybody else's help.
We have another question. I actually feel dovetails a little bit with this, but what 2025 bills do we consider the highest priority coming up in session?
That's a really interesting question. It's a really interesting time to be talking about, because we're only still sort of talking about, the bills are just still being formed at this point. So actual bills, we don't necessarily know. We know that we will be prioritizing climate. We know that we'll be prioritizing environmental justice. We know that we'll be prioritizing climate funding. I mean, so things that support the goals that we all value the most is how we choose. We will be choosing and making sure that those priorities are reflected in all the bills that we prioritize, and doing whatever we can, finding the mechanisms we can to support those bigger goals.
On more granular bill-related issues, are there any issues or bills coming up that you see that would be concerned with reducing or limiting PFAS in industrial processes?
I mean, there was a bill passed this year. It was HB 1153 and SB 956 that had the Protecting State Waters from PFAS Pollution Act. I'm not sure if other bills are going to be coming up that support that again. It wouldn't surprise me. I know that this is a major concern nationally. We've been seeing other states passing legislation that we all listen to other states. We try to learn from each other and build on each other's successes as we look at our colleagues in other states. So I don't know what's coming up around PFAS specifically, but it wouldn't surprise me if something else came up to build on the successes we've had.
Great. And as things come up, we'll be sure to make sure everyone's informed about them as well.
Absolutely.
We got a couple questions around this issue, but I'll frame it this way. The scorecard shows some bipartisan support for environmental issues. So how do we work to build and maintain that support across party lines?
The environment is not a partisan issue. It sometimes is cast as one, but it isn't. The people, no matter what party or lack thereof you're part of, people care about the world that they live in. And we focus on the fact that this doesn't have to be a choice. You don't have to choose between the economy and the environment. You can get both. You can achieve both goals. But really, it's about really just listening to the members who are not necessarily reflexively with us, and hearing what their concerns are and helping them understand how what we're doing reflects their interests and their priorities. It may not be obvious how this bill affects, the issues that are most important to their districts, but we try to make those connections with them. And again, it helps when they're hearing from their constituents. Our conversations with them mean more when they're hearing from their constituents, asking them to do something. So it's a partnership between, your direct lobbying team on the ground in Annapolis and the grassroots that make our work possible.
So just realizing that it's 12:29, so I want to get to one more quick question, then we can wrap things up. We know that climate change is a global issue. How do Maryland's efforts, as reflected in the scorecard, fit into that larger national context?
We are a little state with big goals, and people look to us. Other states look at us as a model for what can be done elsewhere. So, and as we look at other states for what they've done and build on those what their successes are, other states are looking at us too and saying, Maryland's got an idea. let's see if they can do it. And so that builds, our power is built nationally based on the work that we're able to do here. And that, of course, addresses the global concerns. There's a idea that, well, Maryland is too little to make a difference. I'm just here to say that that's not true. Bills that we pass become federal laws.
And I mean, that's amazing, because we know that the little bit of advocacy that individuals have in Maryland can empower that too. So we really do
Absolutely.
want people to use this scorecard to hold their representatives accountable, congratulate those who voted positively for Maryland's environment, and encourage those who didn't to consider it in the future. I know we're very cognizant on time here. It is Friday afternoon at 12:30, which is our normal time for wrapping things up. So that's all the time we do have for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for your support in our work. Thank you, Kim, for the intro today. Thank you, Kristen, for doing the very, very detailed deep dive into what the scorecard is and the policies that we're focused on. We do have a short 5-question survey. The link should be shared in the chat. We encourage you to fill that out. This helps inform how we structure these webinars and what subjects we cover in the future. If there are questions that we didn't answer today, we encourage you to send them our way. Please email them to us, and someone from our team will get back to you. We'll also be sending a follow-up email with this recording. We encourage you to share it amongst your networks, and we're looking forward to a very successful 2025. So thank you all very much for joining us today, and have a wonderful weekend ahead.